Good evening, everyone. We continue on from where we left off in First Samuel chapter 6. We completed yesterday 1 Samuel chapter 5, where we saw how the episodes of Ashdod with Dagon, they tried to move it to Gath, and again they were struck with tumor, and then they moved it to Ekron, and again they faced the same situation. Now, we will take a look very quickly as to the map at the end of this session so that we can put together all the locations, how things were happening at that point in time. But from chapter 5 into chapter 6, remember yesterday I indicated to you that the ark of the Lord had been in the country of the Philistines 7 months. The country of Philistines would be in the territory or the fields. There's another word that is used, but basically in lands of Philistines control. I think that would be a good way of putting it, right? Philistines control. And so they were moving the ark around from Ashdod and then to Gath and then to Ekron. And this is where the narrative continues in verse 2. When they were struck with the tumors, and we were only told tumors at that point in time, and we'll see a little bit later that there's probably more than tumors. And let me just clarify, when you say tumors, they are perhaps cancer, I don't know, because they are all tumors, and probably in the lower abdomen. And later on, we will see that there were mice as well that were running around, and maybe they were bitten with certain illnesses. We are also not told. All we are told is that God laid his hand heavy upon the people and they really suffered. Now, in verse 2, the Philistines called for the priests and the diviners, saying, "What shall we do with the ark of the Lord? Tell us how we shall send it to its place." Remember, priests. Priests are basically Kohen. They are the ones that mediate for the gods of the land. And so they are supposed to be more knowledgeable. More knowledgeable to handle religious issues, isn't it? The next one are a group of diviners. Now, what are diviners? The idea here are those who practice divination. And divination in the old days are people who are also very knowledgeable. Very knowledgeable. And I would surmise they would be knowledgeable with geography, with sciences, right? With astronomy. And the likes. And the reason why I say that is that these are also people who claim to be able to speak to God. And one particular person in this group would be Bilam, or in English, Balaam. Back in the book of Numbers, chapters 22 onwards, you would see this person. They had people like that who were able perhaps to communicate with God, perhaps also to be able to deal with alchemy. And these are what in ancient times people call wizards, are people who know things a whole lot more and gee whiz the people. And so because they were knowledgeable in the community, the people went to ask the priests as well as the diviners, "What shall we do with the ark of the Lord? Since you are all very knowledgeable and you are in tune with the unknowns, you talk to gods, or at least you claim to talk to gods. How should we handle the ark of Jehovah?" This is the ark that was taken from Israel. And so this is what they said. This is from their perspective of the priests and diviners. "If you send away the ark of God of Israel, do not send it empty." And there seems to be a custom that if you have taken somebody else's property, you are supposed to return it. And you shall surely return to him a guilt offering. And we'll talk about this as well. A guilt offering. This one is Asham, and we'll talk about it, right? Asham. "And then you will be healed, and it will be known to you why his hand is not removed from you." Now, the sentence structure of the last part seems to be that if you do all this, you will be restored. I think this would be a better way of explaining. You shall be restored. Now, obviously, heal is a good word because the tumor and then the mice that is around, probably carrying illnesses, and that will be restored to health. "And it will be known to you why his hand is not removed away." Now, remove from you means turned away. Now, what does that mean? It means this. This is one part, and this is the second part. When you return the ark of God of Israel, do not send it empty. Don't be empty-handed. Now, in those days, the customs were such. If you had taken and you are sorry, there is the concept of restitution. Right? Restitution. I think we still practice it today. If you have taken somebody else's things and you return it, the book of Leviticus, chapters 5 and the first part of chapter 6 talks about a guilt offering. So Leviticus chapter 5 and 6. And with the guilt offering, if you have taken somebody's things, you are to give back 1/5 of its value. Now that's God's instructions to Israel. And it seems that there is such a custom, except that God's rules are more specific and fair. And in this case, they said, "What are we going to send back if not empty-handed?" It is to accompany the ark of God to say, "I'm sorry that we have done wrong and we are seeking for healing." And then if you are not healed, you will also know why God has not removed his hand. So the idea of removing hand means to restore them. If they are healed, then they will know. If they're not healed, then they will also realize that. Now, that is an ancient culture in an Oriental sense, that when you are sorry, you will bring something to make peace. You will bring something to repay. You will bring something to make good of the wrong you have done. This concept of guilt offering perhaps is also done in the Philistines culture, but in the Hebrew culture, this is also the same. Asham, if you've done it, come to God, but first restitute, restore what you have taken and pay back. Not only pay back, but you have to give 20% interest, I would say. And that would then you would come to the priest, bring your animals, and then the priest would then sacrifice for you so that you will be atoned and be forgiven. So there is a process, but it is called asham, and is when you are guilty of doing something wrong. In this case, the priests and the diviners are saying that they now have done wrong, otherwise they won't have um, the plague. So many people died in all three cities, and it's something to do with the Ark of God. And so they are seeing it that way. And so basically send it back with a gift and consider it a guilt offering and a sham to say that we're sorry. And please take this as a sign of goodwill gesture and restore us to original. Verse 4. Then the people asked, what shall be the asham, the guilt offering, which we shall return to him? When you return the ark, remember the word return is shuv. The Hebrew word is very clear. You are returning to its rightful owner. That's what it means, return to him. Now, you'd be surprised to see, why does it not say return to Israel? Why does it say return to God? They took it from Israel and they realized that the ark of God is supernatural. It has certain powers that is biting them. It has certain powers that is bringing down plagues, tumors, and death upon the people. And so they are saying, we have taken this from God. And so now we want to return it to God. This is a perspective which is little understood. The Ark of the Covenant, or the Ark of the Lord, or Ark of God of Israel, where it is placed in the tabernacle, does not belong to Israel. It was made by Moses and the people in the wilderness. And in the second year, when they left Egypt, they built and set up the tabernacle and put the ark in its place. It's called the Ark of God, means this: the Ark of Jehovah basically means the ark that belongs to God. That is how the language is structured. So they understood that this is not Israel's ark. Israel has the ark, but the ark actually belongs to God. So the returning here is to return to God. And so the priests and the diviners said, 5 golden tumors, 5 golden mice, according to the number of the lords of the Philistines. 1 plague was on all of you and on your lords. Which means that when God struck them with tumors, and maybe the tumors were caused by the mice of certain illness. Now, maybe it's cancerous, I don't know, but it is called a plague, right? A plague. The word plague is a blow, a strike of God, right? A pestilence and a strike. And this is seen by God striking at them on all of you, means the people, and on your lords, the leaders. 5 of them. Now, it is interesting that we are beginning to see a little bit more Hebrew understanding that God holds the leaders of nations responsible for their misdeeds. Although the people suffer, the leaders suffer most. Now, this is the concept of hierarchy. And so the leaders are sitting on top. They decide what to do. And when the plague came, it hit the leaders and it also hit the people. Why the people? Because the people also shares this the strike of God, or the blow of God, and the mice that leads to tumors bit them and infected them and gave them cancer and whatnot. And people did die. Now, tumors would be big, big. And then you have mice. And these are all golden. So these are valuable, isn't it? These are very valuable things. This is gold, made of gold. This is not gold plated. This is not gold sheets, but these are 5 pieces each. And hence, it doesn't need to be huge, but it already resembles valuable gifts, right? Valuable gifts as an asham. And they feel that bad because God had really struck them so hard that they realize that it is way beyond them. The God of Israel is very angry. Verse 5. And you shall make likeness of your tumors and likeness of your mice that ravage the land. And you shall, look at this, you shall give glory to the God of Israel. Perhaps he will ease his hand from you, your gods, and your land. Now look at what has actually happened. We're getting more information as to what exactly happened in chapter 5. And so the 5 golden tumors here and 5 golden mice is now said to be in the likeness. The word likeness is image. In the image. Now, image here is like the image of God, right? Man was made in the image of God. So this would be the image of your tumors. How your big tumors look like and how the mice look like. And they are all images. How God destroyed the land. Now, what part of the land are they worried about destruction? There are 5 major cities of the Philistines. 2 of them, Gath and Ekron, are agricultural territory. And when they ravage the land, it will be the land inwards from the coast cities. And it must have been where the mice were all over the place. Either they went after the crops or they went after the people. We don't really know. So no, I'm just making some speculation here. But it destroyed the land. And so they were told, give glory. Now, glory is weight. When God struck the land with a heavy hand, it's the same word, weight, heavy, right? Heavy. And so in this context, the same word is now understood as to give God the glory, give God the importance, something which they have never done before. And then this word here, and perhaps, the word perhaps is very interesting because it says, it literally means, if so doing, he will do this, right? If so may be, unless you do this, he will not do that. And this whole idea here is a hope. They do not know God, but they know that this God of Israel is very, very powerful. So powerful that their gods would fall down and bow down to Jehovah. And in this case, they are just trying to do what they can. And hopefully, God will ease his hand from you, your gods, and it is Dagon plus plus and more. and your land. And so it has affected them personally, it's affected their idols, it's also affected their land. Verse 6. Again, this is an expression from the priests, right? I would say this is an expression from the priests and the diviners. Why then do you harden your hearts as the Egyptians and Pharaoh hardened their hearts? When he had severely dealt with them, did they not allow the people to go and they departed? Understand this. First of all, let's understand the word harden. In this case, the word harden here is cause to make heavy. It's the same word as glorify, make heavy, and it means to be stubborn. And that's the word, right? That's the word. To make heavy, to make dull. Why are you hardening your hearts? And they know this by word of mouth, the history of the Exodus, of what happened in Egypt for a long period, at least 9 to 11 months, and to Pharaoh, where they fought with God. And so the priests and the diviners actually know this very well. Do not do this, because the powerful Egyptians and Pharaoh, they actually hardened their heart. They made themselves so heavy, so stubborn, and they refused to let the people go. And when God had severely dealt with them, and the idea of severely dealt with them is to act on them in such intensity. Did they not allow the people to go, to send them away, and they walked away? So finally, what this actually means is you cannot fight God. That's basically in a nutshell. You cannot fight God. If you try to, you will be destroyed. You are not completely destroyed. And if you remember what happened to the Egyptians and Pharaoh, they were destroyed completely when the firstborn had died right across the land, including animals. That was intense. Verse 7 is very interesting. Now, therefore, prepare a new cart and this word, milk cows. Now, let me just put this word in. This is an old English word, right? This old English word. This is milk. Okay, this word is milk. Milk cows, right? This is not a particular breed of cows. It literally means cows that is nursing. Means they have babies. So therefore and they need wood to do this, prepare a new cart. New means never used before, right? Never used before. A new cart and 2 milk cows. Notice this is cows, all right? These are not oxen where they are stronger. These are cows which has never been yoked, meaning they have never been used, not used in farming. They are merely mothers. And then you hitch the cows to the cart, take the calves home away from them. This is a very important expression. And let me explain this to you. What it means is you have the cows, right? And then they are to pull a cart. And what is going to happen is when they pull the cart, and there are two cows, and when they pull the cart, the babies, right, their calves, are sent home. What is going to happen is these mothers of the cows, right? The cows who are mothers will always be pining for their babies, and they want to go home. They don't want to go away from their cows. This is a very important piece of information about the setup of the calves, right? The cows. And in the same vein, then you place the ark of the Lord on the cart. And then you put the articles of gold, remember, 5 gold tumors, 5 gold mice, which you return to him as an asham in a box by its side. And then send it away that it may go. And this is not let. Basically, they're saying, let the milk cows whose babies are taken away, send them off and see where they go. So watch verse 9. Watch. Verse 9 says, watch. And basically is to observe. Right? Look carefully. If that's a condition, if it goes up by the way of its own territory to Beit Shemesh. Now, this is a, how should you say, this is a place that is outside. So out on the way of its own territory, its own boundary, out of the Philistines' territory, to a place called Beit Shemesh. This would be an Israelite place. Then we are talking that if that happens, now notice it's a big if here. If that happens, then he has done us this great evil. This proves that God has struck. And this is evidence. So far, it looks like that, but if you want to prove it, well, do this. Now, the second part is a continuation, but if not, then we will know that it was not his hand that struck us. It happened to us by chance. What do you mean by chance? It means by accident. That's what it means, right? By accident. It is by chance, by accident. It is not the hand of God. And so this is a test to see for sure once and for all. We are all thinking that this is God. Now, when it goes all the way back to Beth Shemesh, then it is God. If not, well, too bad, so sad for us. That would be the test for now. Verse 10. The men did so, took 2 milk cows, hitched them to the cart, shut up their cows at home. Remember, this is to entice the milk cows to come home. And if they don't come home, it must be God's hand and leading that has brought them all the way to Beth Shemesh. So they put the ark of the Lord on the cart, the box with the golden mice and the likeness of the tumors, and this is their asham, their guilt offering with their restitution. Restitution not only to give back the ark, but to give more, right? Give more. Verse 12. The cows took the straight way in the direction of Beit Shemesh. The idea here of the straight way, the idea here is, the word People were just. They are straight. They are level. This is that word where you are a straight line. It is not bending, right? In Chinese, this is the word. And so that is the straight way, the 正路, the way that is straight in the direction of Beit Shemesh. Going on, they went along the highway that led to Beit Shemesh, lowing as they went. The idea of lowing, this is the idea of bellowing, making sounds, making cow sounds. Okay. In modern day terms, this would be the siren to let people know that they are coming. They did not turn aside to the right or to the left. And the lords of the Philistines followed them. Now, the word followed them is to walk behind. Walked behind them. Now, I presume this would be somewhat behind to the border of Beit Shemesh. To the border of Beit Shemesh means now they have a border. The border of Ekron is met. And now this is the border of Beit Shemesh. I would say this is what they will call an invisible border, but it is well understood in ancient times. They knew each other's land. Verse 13, now the people of Beit Shemesh were reaping their wheat harvest in the valley. This would be sometime in April, May, right? April, May, where they have their wheat harvest. And this is springtime. And they raised their eyes and saw the ark, and they were glad to see it. They rejoiced to see it, right? They were elated. Maybe we should use the word. They were elated to see visually. Verse 14. The cart came into the field of, and this word is Yehoshua of Beit Shemit, Hashemit. Basically, the name of this field or the owner of this field is not Joshua, it's actually Yehoshua. It's a very popular name. Yehoshua means God is salvation, or God will save. And it stood there. And the idea of stood there, literally, the cart was there, the cows were not moving. It was standing there, and there was a large stone. And the stone is huge. And the cart was there. And what they did was the people split the wood of the cart, used it to burn, and offered the cows as a burnt offering for the Lord, the Asham. This is the narrative going forward. The Levites took down the ark of the Lord, and this is correct. Only the Levites, right, are supposed to handle the ark with care. And they also took the box that was with it, with the articles of gold, and put them on the large stone. And the men of Beit Shemesh offered burnt offerings and sacrifices that day to the Lord. And so here you find that there was sacrifices, burnt offerings, The cows were slaughtered, and they had the articles of gold. And so that was a whole ritual that was done. And now we come to a little uh, pericope, they call it, or a sidebar, I would call it. It's a side piece of information that's now being told. Verse 16 tells us this. This is information. When the 5 lords of the Philistines saw it, they returned to Ekron that day. So they went back and says, done. They have done what the priests and diviners have said. The test was shown, and the test told us that it was truly the hand of God. Right? That was clear now. It was beyond a shadow of doubt. Where they had put obstacles for the test to be done, all obstacles were overcome, and the cows, the milk cows, did not come home. The milk cows went all the way there, and it stopped in its track at the very place where God had designated. Verse 17. These are the golden tumors which the Philistines returned as an asham for God. Look at the count. 1 for Ashdod, 1 for Gaza, 1 for Ashkelon, 1 for Gath, and 1 for Ekron. These are 5 cities. There are only 5 cities in the land of the Philistines: Ashdod, Gaza, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron. And what had happened is the ark of God had entered into Ashdod, went to Gath, and went to Ekron. Verse 18. And the golden mice, according to the number of all the cities that belong to the 5 lords, both fortified cities and of the country villages, 5 apiece. The large stone on which they set the ark of the Lord is still there to this day when it was written, remember, not to today as in the 21st century, in the field of Yehoshua of Beth Shemi. So Yehoshua owns that field, and it is returned to Yehoshua, a very apt name, and where they set up the ark of the Lord. Now we come to a gruesome piece of information. Verse 19, God, right? God struck. The word strike here is the same word that is used to Ashdod, Gath, and Ekron. This word is nakah, to strike, to, how should we say, to cause to punish, I would say, to punish, strike down. Some of the men of Beth Shemesh. Now, this is some. Let's take a look at this word. And this word doesn't exist, actually. Doesn't exist in the Hebrew. Okay. Let me just take this out. That God struck down the men of Beth Shemesh because they had looked. Now, this is an important word. This word is correct. They looked into the ark of the Lord. They are not supposed to peer into the ark of the Lord. And so he struck down, and let me just take this one out as well. There is no, of all the people, I think we need to understand. They struck down the people, and this phrase here needs a bit of explanation, and then you will understand why I'm saying and I'm doing what I'm doing now. This is to clarify. In the Hebrew, this is seen as 70 men of 50,000 men. All right. So just stay with me. It's 70 men of 50,000 men. This is how the Hebrew expresses it. This is not for a fact, and clearly it does not say 50,070 men. It does not say that. And so let me repeat, it does not say that. Does not. It says 70 men out of 50,000 men. That would be a better way of expressing it. And by Jewish tradition, they would say that these 70 men were the leaders. Just like in the Philistines, God held the leaders. And here, the leaders. Now, we don't know how many actually looked into the ark, but clearly God decided that in this particular punishment, that all 70 leaders, all 70 leaders were struck down. And by strike down, I think it would mean killed. And this is a great, right? And the people mourned because the Lord had struck with a great slaughter all 70 leaders died. Now, perhaps if you look at it that way, that would be a bit more meaningful. It doesn't make any sense to say God went in and killed everybody in town. It would be more meaningful when God struck down some the leaders as well as some of the people, maybe, right? The ones who were responsible to bring the plague to them. Now, remember, I had mentioned this. God looks at the people this way, the leaders, and just as they had done, God would strike this and this. And so this is probably how it would be seen like. Now, Bet Shemesh is an Israelite town. And so these are Israelites who died. Verse 20, the men of Bet Shemesh, this is an Israelite town, and he says, who is able to, who will prevail? This is the word, who will prevail? And this particular word, I guess, it is struggle, right? In a struggle between man and God, who is able to come out on top? Now that would be the word here. Who is able to prevail? Who is able to overcome? Who is able to endure? And this word here is to stand to the face of the Lord. And he is called this holy God. Now, this is an important word. Holy, again, I have mentioned to you, holy means set apart. But it literally means special, unique, one and only. And to whom shall he? Now, this word is ascend. Go up is ascend. from us. What is important is they are seeing that this punishment is like a judgment of God, and it is something that is pleasing to God in this particular circumstance. The word go up, right? Verse 21, so they sent messengers to the inhabitants of Kiryat Yearim, saying the Philistines have brought back the ark of the Lord. Come down and take it up to you. This is the next stop. So what has happened is God is not keen to put it at Beth Shemesh because they have sinned. And in this particular violation, there is no atonement. God sent the punishment, or what he called struck down the people, 70 of 50,000 men, and they were all leaders, perhaps, and it crippled the town. And it is seen as a major heavy hand of God. And they were scared. Obviously, they were scared, and they could see that this is a holy God. What does this mean then? So let me just close with this. With this, we are saying that God's house, God's rules. You do not violate any of these rules. Now, this is not said to the Philistines, obviously. This is actually told to Moses, to the sons of Israel. This is what you need to do. In the wilderness, in the book of Exodus, in the book of Leviticus, everything was clearly laid out, and they had Aaron and then the descendants of Aaron with the priests to teach them exactly what to do. And yet they failed. And you notice God is very severe when such things are violated. There is no atonement in this case. God did not give them a chance to repent. And you would notice that throughout the 5 books of Moses, when we look at the book of Exodus, the book of Leviticus, the book of Numbers, the book of Deuteronomy, you'll find practically in every book there is an occasion. They worship the golden calf. 3,000 were killed, right? You have Nadav and Avihu. They offered up strange fire. God sent fire and struck them down. Korah and company wanted to be priests, and God swallowed them up. And so on and so forth. They came against Moses, and God sent fiery serpents, and they died. And you will see that in this case, they looked into the ark and they died. And so you find that every so often, God had to show his hand. And whenever God shows his hand, it is unambiguous. Let me look at this. Unambiguous. You don't have to test God. Don't have to be like the Philistines. Send milk cows so that the cows will come home and don't go to Beth Shemesh. But they did. And so it is now unambiguously known that the hand of God is particularly heavy on Ashdod, on Gath, on Ekron, and now on Beth Shemesh. God is just. Just because the Philistines did bad and God punished them, so did Beth Shemesh, and God punished them as well. So it's to demonstrate to us that God is not a respecter of persons. In fact, more severely, for people who knew that they shouldn't violate. And with this, the men of Beth Shemesh says, God is a holy God. God is a special God. God has rules, and he keeps his rules, and he will be fair and just to the men of Philistines and to the men of Israel. God will deal with them differently because they did not receive the Torah. And with those who have received the Torah, God is of particular severity towards them. And with this, we come to the end of chapter 6, going on to chapter 7 tomorrow, and we'll observe what happens. So 7 months is in play right now.